Okay, so I decided to make a little video about the new iX14, and I'm comparing it to my current iX12. So the first thing is, let's just power them both on. And, I think there's been a couple of videos already about how long it takes to boot. Now my iX12 is original batch. I bought it right when it came out, and obviously the iX14, it's the same thing. So just while it's booting, generally, on the iX14, they've removed some of the screws to make it look nicer. Actually, they never really bothered me, the screws holding on the gimbals on the iX12. I guess it's a cleaner look. Other than that, generally, one of the reasons I like the iX14 is it's the same size as the iX12, so it fits in my hands just the same, which is great. The, there's these sticks actually look more like they're from the NX series. I kind of preferred the iX ones, but I'm sure I'll get used to these ones as well. One thing to note while they're still booting is these sliders. Like, especially over on this side, they don't feel as good as on the iX12. Like the iX12, they were actually much nicer, smoother feel. So unfortunately, on that one, I still prefer the sliders on the iX12. So I've got a test model here, and while my iX12 continues to boot. One of the nice new features, though, is being able to blow up the screen. So you can actually see a larger dash panel, which is kind of nice. Other than that, it's pretty much the same in terms of user interfaces. There's a couple of new menu options, but generally it's the same as the iX12. So as I'm still waiting for this to boot, I can go to the model adjust, show some of the menus. I don't have a model bound to this one, so things like forward programming and other things won't be showing at the moment. I'll compare that if my iX12 ever decides to actually boot. The speaker is definitely louder, which is nice. It sounds like they listened to the feedback from the iX12 and actually made a much louder speaker, which is great. Other than that, all the switches and everything is basically the same as the iX12. So I'm just going to wait for this to finish booting. So the battery life, initially when I got the iX14, it seemed like it was going through battery a bit quicker. It fell from 100% quicker, but it seems to have stabilized. I haven't really, had to do much more charging to it. So finally, my iX12 actually decides to boot. So you'll notice one of the first things is the iX14. The screen responds a lot quicker, which is really nice. There's no slowness like you had with the iX12. On a similar type model, the model adjust menus are the same. Model setup. Again, you'll notice the difference in screen speed. There's a couple of new things here, which is combo switch and logical switch. You could do this before, basically with like mixing and or. When you say you want to use this switch and or this switch. What's new in the iX14 is they've added like a combo switch. So you can go in and say, I want, switch A with this position, switch B in these positions, and your relation, if it's an and or an or. And you can sort of name them as to, what they're doing, which you couldn't do in the iX12. A logical switch is basically the same thing. You can go to logical switch and you can say, okay, I want, this grid to be marked as position 5. So, I'll go in here. I can go over to this one and say I want that to come up as position 2 or something like that, right? For those switches. Now, you can't assign functions there, but what ends up happening is you go back over to something like model adjust and mixing, and you go and say, you want a new mix type. You can come down to which switch it is, and way at the bottom, because you've defined them, you'll see like a combo switch one or a logical switch one. And you see there's like the 2 and the 5 that I entered in the previous menu will come up there. So it's just sort of easier to do switch mixing in the iX14, but it's not like it's not something that wasn't already available in the iX12. It's just it wasn't as intuitive. So if I went to like my Freewing F14, hang on a sec. You also notice that the
flight mode 3
model switching is much faster than it was before. But here in mixing, I had like all sorts of combo switches already predefined. So like I had relations of this and this. It's just they've made it easier to do combo mixing.
Flight mode 3 flight mode 3 flight mode 1.
So one of the other things that you can do as well in the iX14, which is nice that the iX12 doesn't,
flight mode 1,
is you just sort of touch the switch and it tells you, you can have announcements. You can customize the announcements as to what they say. So, without even having to switch,
flight mode 1,
I can just sort of touch the switch and it tells me what it's, what I want it to. So right now it's telling me my F14's in flight mode 1. So if I flip models again, and I'll go over to like my, one menu ones, my P51. And again, you can see how much faster it is for switching between models. So I bound my P51 to the new iX14 already. It's got all the sort of same screens as before. One of the things you'll notice though is this new graphical display.
Battery not charged for flying.
Yeah. Which is kind of nice. So, and you can customize what all these are. For some reason, there's no timer on here, but it's usually audio anyways. But I'm never really looking at my radio anyways, but it is kind of a cool graphical system. Other than that, all the other menus along here are pretty much the same. Again, though, with any of these, you can make it large. So in comparison to an iX12, model setup, that's basically the same. If I go back over here to mixing, they do have, because they have more channels, mixing here, you only had like 12 mixes. Here you have 16 mixes. So a bunch of these things, they've just extended more programming. You go to sequencer, they think they've got more sequences and so forth, and just some things like that. Under system settings, the only thing they've done is add regulatory. Under system config, other than that, it's basically the same. In calibration, what they do have over on this one is touch sensitivity for the switch announcements. I haven't actually programmed one on this model yet, so other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. Overall, I do really like the larger screen. I like larger screens on my radios, so even though it's not that much bigger screen, the size I really do find helpful and appreciative. The battery, well, my iX12 battery is only a couple months old. I bought it 3 months ago because my original one was going, so I bought the largest spectrum battery for it. And still the iX14 seems to be lasting quite a bit longer. And putting it to sleep mode is just a lot. It's about the same as the iX12. It sort of goes in quicker, but the battery does seem to last quite a bit longer. But overall, that's sort of a quick comparison of my iX12 versus my iX14. I do like the iX14 overall. It's got a number of nice new features. My iX12 is pretty old, so I'm kind of happy to have a new radio. And that pretty much finishes my current review on just the differences between the 12 and the 14. Thanks.